Welcome to Cut to Legal.
Hello and welcome back to Cut to Legal with James Pacitti. James is the managing attorney at Pacitti Law Firm, where he guides producers, production companies, and creators through the legal side of entertainment, from development and financing to production and distribution. My name is Kevin Rosenquist, and today we'll be talking about rights clearances, music footage, trademarks, and why skipping this step can stop your project cold. James, welcome back. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Kevin.
So what does clearance mean in terms of the entertainment world, and why is it's such a critical step before release?
Very concisely, clearance is making sure you have all the rights that you need to include materials in your project. That could be music, that could be copyright material, that could be artwork, that could be photographs. So it's essentially either having legal permission for one reason or another, whether it's through contract, whether it's through fair use, in the case typically of documentaries. It's making sure that you have the right to use whatever materials you're utilizing in the project. Like I said, it could be music, it could be artwork, it could be photographs, making sure that you have permission to use those materials.
I'm pretty sure we've talked about this before, but I wanted to bring it up again. I know there's a lot of myths out there, such as the 10-second rule for music, or I think there's even like a 5-second one too, or YouTube is free. Can you kind of talk about some of those myths that you hear and how they can cause problems?
Yeah, there's a lot of myths. The 10-second rule is one of them. Those who are not sure what that means using 10 seconds of music without license or permission. There is no duration threshold. If even using 1 second of copyrighted materials without permission, without a license, is copyright infringement. Some of the others are, if you're not making money, they think that must be fair use. If you're not making money off of something, then people think it's fair use. Some of the others, if you give people credit, then it's okay. If you only sample a little bit, what are some of the others? Content on YouTube is free in use. There's a lot of myths out there. I don't know how they get started, but they certainly spread like wildfire. And those are just some of the ones I've heard.
I wonder if the YouTube one is just because like a lot of people, amateur creators probably wouldn't care, if their stuff was used. They'd be like, oh, this is great. Yeah, go, this is awesome. I wonder if that's how that started.
I think it's because I think there's some truth to that. And I think part of it is also that there's a lot of use going on without permission and without consequences. So people think that, oh, well, then maybe there's nothing wrong with that because I'm using it. My friends are using it. Everyone I know is, whether it's on social media, whether it's ever in other mediums, they're using it and nothing's happening. I'm not getting a cease and desist letter or anything like that. So, yeah, I think that in this age, there's the internet, social media, where there's a lot of sharing of materials, there is an underlying assumption that these materials are okay to use. And it's one of these things that I use the analogy of just because you don't get pulled over for speeding doesn't mean speeding is legal, and it doesn't mean that'll be a explanation to a cop that, well, I've sped 100 times and no one pulled me over, so
no one stopped me.
So no one stopped me, so I assumed it was okay to go 75 miles an hour on the 405.
Yeah, and to your point before, like Instagram, you can use music on Instagram. Like you're allowed to. Like they, as a private person, you can add music to your posts, and that's part of Instagram, right?
The music that Instagram has obtained that they're
has obtained the rights to. Yeah. So I wonder if that confuses people too.
Yeah, it probably does, because they don't understand, because obviously no one reads terms of service for anything because they're so long and turgid, really thick, dense legal language. So the things like that are explained, and where there are various websites that people are using materials or maybe using music without licensing, then it creates this assumption that, well, because I use it on Instagram, I use a song on Instagram, I could use a same portion, same amount of that same song in a film, in a short film, or anything of that nature.
Can you talk about location and appearance releases and how those incorporate into the clearance process?
Sure. Location releases are two different things. They serve very similar functions, and basically both are to obtain permission. One is permission. Location releases agreements. They're the same thing. They'll affect the same thing. Location agreements will have the releases because what it is, it's an agreement with the owner of the property to usually multiple elements are combined. As it relates to clearance, there's one element that we're talking about that is being able to depict the property and the owner's trademark, trade name, the interior, the exterior, and so forth. It also, the agreements will provide for permission to enter the property and use the property and things of that nature. But that's not really a clearance issue. Clearance has to do with the right to depict the property. And in particular, because you can depict property from the outside. If you show a building on a street as it appears, you don't have to get permission for that. Now, if you really focus in on it and then perhaps you're really displaying their trademark or trade dress, that could be an issue. But it's just getting permission to be able to depict that location in, let's say, a film, for example. Appearance release is similar, that it's just someone is agreeing to allow their image, likeness to appear in, let's say, a film. Appearance releases are common in documentaries. In feature films, you'll have, because it'll be actors, it'll be performer engagement agreements or actor agreements. But in, for example, a documentary, an appearance release or an interview release, it's just agreeing, yes, you can use my image, my voice, my likeness, and so forth in this particular project.
What happens if a producer or a director or someone involved with a film skips that clearance? What are the consequences?
The short answer is the consequences can be lawsuits and inability to distribute a project. Because if in order to distribute a project, no matter a TV or film project, you need errors and omissions insurance. And errors and omissions insurance is obtained from an insurance company, and you have to represent the insurance company and often provide the agreements that show you have the rights to depict whatever it may be in your film. If it's artwork, if it's music, if, like I said, photographs and so forth. If you don't have that, then they're not going to insure you. And the distributor is not going to touch it because they don't want to get sued. Right. So you can, one, not be able to distribute a project, and then two, if you distribute it in some way, let's say you self-distribute it, maybe you're doing something that you're not doing through a traditional distributor, and you self-distribute in some way, even maybe on a YouTube or something, that doesn't protect you because you're still infringing on their project, infringing on their rights, whether it be copyright or trademark or other rights, privacy rights, and things of that nature. So you could find yourself with a lawsuit as well. So basically lawsuits and probably an inability to distribute your project, at least in a traditional way.
So with these clearances, I mean, a lot of the people I'm sure who get maybe in trouble for it are probably indie filmmakers on a budget, people that don't have the big budget backing or the big studio backing. What clearances should they prioritize above all the others? What is the most important thing that they cannot skip?
You're talking about clearance like this, it's very broad when you're talking about, say, a feature film. So when you're talking about prioritizing clearances, you start at the beginning. Because what we're talking about is clearances are related to something called chain of title. And chain of title is just all of the agreements, releases, consents that show someone owns all the rights to the film and has the ability to distribute it. And that's something you must have what's called clean chain of title to be able to distribute it, because no one's going to touch it. An insurer's not going to insure it. The distributor's not going to distribute it if you don't have clean chain of title. Because if someone's music in it that's not yours, then there's a good chance there's going to be a lawsuit, and their distributor insurance company wants that. So talking about what should independent filmmakers prioritize, it starts with the script. It starts with the underlying material. So again, if we're talking about a film, we're talking about a TV show, you're talking about your underlying material. You got to make sure you have all the rights. That might seem obvious, but sometimes there's assumptions made. For example, we've seen instances where a company bought a script, but the script was based on someone else's short story. They had rights to the script, but didn't have rights to the short story. That created a problem. So you got to start at the beginning, so to speak, and that's with your underlying material, typically a script. It might also be the script is based upon existing literary property, like an article, a novel or a story, and of course, some productions are being based on video games. So somebody can't just write a script, for example, based on a video game or book. They have to get the film rights, for example, to that video game or book. So that's where you begin, and then, as you just alluded to, then location releases, appearance releases, where you're shooting, who you're shooting. An appearance releases also, of course, there's going to be performer engagement agreements, there's going to be actor agreements. And then if you're going to use music, you can't use 1 second of music without permission. That's something, if you license music or if you hire someone to create your music originally, like a composer or head of music, have to have rights for every second of that. Then, you're going to talk about artwork, trademarks, and so forth. What probably one of the most common mistakes we see with clearance issues. This comes up all the time. They get permission to shoot it at a location. And at that location, let's say it's an office, let's say it's a home, there's artwork on the wall. There's an assumption made that because the owner of the home or the office or whatever building it might be gave permission to shoot in the location, that everything there may be shot. But the owner does not have the right, unless they've secured it, which is unlikely, to have the piece of artwork shown. They don't. Wow. They just bought that artwork and put it in their home.
That's interesting. It
doesn't give them the right to depict it. So that happens a lot where there's signage or trademarks, where you have a little more flexibility. Copyright, there really is almost no flexibility. Trademark, you can show trademarks as long as it doesn't go too far. You're not focusing on it. Doesn't look like there's no brand tarnishment, or it doesn't look as if it's being emphasized to such a degree as if they're sponsoring the project. So those are in that order is typically what filmmakers or anybody producing any kind of project should follow.
What about if somebody's got a buddy who used to be in a band, right? And he sends him an email and says, "Hey, you mind if I use that one song in my movie? Is that cool?" And you're like, "Yeah, no problem, man." Is that enough, or do you need more than that?
No, ultimately it's not enough, because it just isn't enough clarity there about what the rights are. So when you license music, typically it's a master use and synchronization rights agreement, a sync license. And that gives a right to use the music and synchronize it with the images. So that's what they call it, a sync license, SYNC, short for synchronization. And in that, there is specifics about, the license fee, the duration of the license, how much of that particular song could be used, what's it going to be used for. So it may be to be fine because the person gave rights to it, but the problem is that buddy may not be the only one who has rights. You're referencing he was in a band. So who wrote that song? Because you may think your buddy's got all the rights, but his 3 other bandmates actually have rights too, because they collaborated and wrote that together, and one provided the lyrics, one the melody, and then they recorded it. So it also depends what you're talking about, because there's a difference between licensing, say, a U2 song and having to license that from U2 or the Rolling Stones or Taylor Swift, and then actually recording essentially a cover. It's a very different, it's a different license. Both are sync, but they're different in that one, you're using the actual recording made by Taylor Swift, for example. Another, you're hiring someone else to sing the Taylor Swift song and provide the vocals. Much less expensive, the latter one, but you still need permission.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I could see how that could get a little dicey. The artwork thing is super interesting to me. I never in a million years would have thought of that.
Happens constantly, because they don't think about it, and it's in the shot, and it's really prominent, and there's no latitude, because trademark, you have some latitude. If you're showing trademarks, like people misunderstand, you can show actual products in your film or your TV show. You just got to be careful about it, and often they're not really shown just to avoid any issues, because it's not always black and white what is too much, or whether or not there's brand tarnishment, because depending on the subject matter, the owners of the trademark are like, we don't want to be associated with this.
It's one thing to have like a little bit of product placement, but if it's like a really, I don't know, movie that is hitting somewhere where that brand does not want to be associated with, that could be bad.
Well, 100%. For example, if you say you can show someone drinking a Budweiser, If you know, it doesn't look like a beer commercial. You know, they're just sitting there like, oh, you can tell it's a Budweiser, but it's not holding it up in front of the camera like it's, like I said, a commercial. But if the person, yes, exactly. But if the person drinking it is underage,
Yeah.
that's where Budweiser, no. We don't want to be associated with
Or
underage.
driving or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. These exactly. Drinking and driving, underage, and maybe some other things too, in a stolen car. So there is some. I digress a little bit, but you know, with copyright, which was what covers artwork and photographs and things of that nature, there's no latitude. Like you can't show someone's photograph. Someone took a photograph. You have an issue of both the image of the person in the photograph and the person who took the photograph, who may have ownership. So copyright, that comes up a lot. That's something in clearance that should be covered in a script clearance report. A film should have an attorney conduct a script clearance report to identify all the potential issues, and then film clearance on the back end to catch what maybe wasn't obvious from the script.
So do you watch the movie? Like, do they give you a copy of the movie and say, okay, let me know if you see anything that we may have missed?
100%. Yes.
Wow,
So that's part of the services we offer when it's production legal. Like I said, the front end is we take the script, we go through it, we identify all the issues. For instance, it might say the lead character walks into the room and the television set is on. It's like, oh, okay. Well, you can have in the background an episode of Cheers, you know, for both audio and visual. Because let's say it's playing the music from Cheers, you know, everyone knows your name, and then you'll see Sam Malone and Diane. Like, you have to have permission for that. And they think that's another one of those myths. It's in the background. Can't really see it that well. If it can be identified, that's an episode of Cheers, or you know whatever show it might be. Then that's a problem. So we would identify that, and then when we look at it, when we actually watch it, there might be something else that comes up. For instance, again, the example: someone walking into a room and they mention in the notes in the script that the television is on, but they don't mention about anything on the wall. Well, now circling back to what we talked about before, now that they've shot it. When we see all this artwork on the wall. Maybe we see sculptures, maybe we see photographs. And I said, wow, that's a problem unless those are either, ideally, it's created by the production. So if there's artwork on the wall, there's a couple things. You get pre-cleared, there's production houses, prop houses rather, you have pre-cleared artwork. You throw that on the wall. Or it's created by production. Otherwise, your only alternative is to get permission from the artist, and you know that's not the route you're probably going to go, especially after you've already shot the film and it's established. So that can be a big problem because now you have this issue. Everyone's left, the actors have gone home, and you have this scene that was shot in which the artwork is inescapable. So that's why it's really important to your crew. The producers and your set designers and production designers, everyone's got to be really attuned to that, and not always are, and so those issues come up.
Yeah, no doubt. That'd be a gut punch.
It'd be very, very, very bad.
All right. Well, thanks for listening to today's episode of Cut to Legal. You know, if you're a filmmaker or even a content creator and you need help making sure your project is legally cleared for release, visit PacittiLawFirm.com. Don't try to roll the dice as you may have noticed from our conversation. Not a good idea. As always, don't forget to like, review, subscribe so you never miss an episode. We got lots of great stuff coming your way. James, always great chatting with you. Thanks so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.